I was side stage before I realized that we didn't have our chime this morning, apparently. Is that true? Okay. I've been waiting for the second chime for a long time now. That was a very long period of silence. That wasn't intentional, by the way. I was experiencing it too. I was like, this silence is lasting forever. All right, let's reset because I've got a kind of cool opener here for you. So we're gonna pretend that we just heard a chime, and now we're gonna go into our that was planted in my brain still remains within the sound of silence. So, in keeping with our theme of kind of the juxtaposition of music and styles, we had Johnny Cash covering, Nine Inch Nails. Anybody recognize that band? Heavy metal band called Disturbed. David Draymond covered that song, The Sound of Silence, and it is well worth both listening to, watching the music video. It's always interesting when different artists and styles merge. And today we're talking about what we can do from learning to listen to silence. But before we get quiet and contemplative, or I should say, since we've already been quiet and contemplative here, we do need to get loud about something, and that is the fact that yesterday we had an amazing day at the cardboard boat race. Oh, hold on, I think I pulled this out in case anybody wasn't able to see. This is our second first place medal that we won there, and John was a little concerned. He told me yesterday when I was getting myself pumped up, he's like, I didn't know you were so alpha. And I don't think I realized I had it in me either, because we were fresh off of last year's victory and I was feeling encouraged. We had taken it out for a paddle in the bayou, and it was great. And so we had an absolutely wonderful time this year. John was my co-pilot before the race. Some of you were able to make it there to the race, which was fun. Some of you weren't. Shannon wasn't. He texted me this meme. He said, "How you doing?" This meme from Star Wars, which was quite fitting for the background. Also, I've had a lot of people asking about this, and I brought it only to be clear. This is not mine. This is Mary Ellen's from last year. I took mine off last year and immediately threw it in the trash can. It is gone. It will not make a return. This is entirely too uncomfortable. It was a one-time thing. So the mask we did. We had a lot of fun with that. John and I killed it in all the races. And then at the very end, we were just kind of feeling ourselves a bit, and we said to the Coast Guard 3-person plus team, we're like, hey, if you want to grudge match, let's see who's really fast here. And yeah, we just blew them out of the water. Literally, I think. We were. It's kind of weird for me, kind of being the lead teacher of a spiritual community. I understand I'm supposed to kind of feel more spiritual and probably not the way that I'm feeling, but I was just sort of like, bring it on. We've got this. Somebody mentioned issuing a challenge to any other faith communities like St. John's to put in a boat for next year, and maybe we can cut this part from the recording later. I said, I kind of hope if we were going to do anything that we could send an invitation to like Life Church. Let them enter so that we can just like obliterate them too. Maybe sing come along the way. This is why I sometimes question my role as the lead teacher of a spiritual community. My goodness. All right. So big thanks to John Leitner, my co-pilot this year, everybody who helped. It was a super, super fun day. So many fun stories. I'll just tell you a couple. One, there was a young boy who was, his mom came up to us, and his mom said that he's autistic, he built a boat and entered it into the kids' cutter class, and he watched a documentary in the last year on the Titanic, and it inspired him, and he wanted to become a boat builder, and he's been obsessed with boat building. When he heard about the cardboard boat race, he wanted to enter, and he modeled his design after our boat from last year that he saw, because he recognized that ours was clearly the best out of the fleet. And she was telling us this, and I said, oh, well, we would be happy to share anything. And she was so glad. We exchanged numbers. He actually won in the kids' class, and so he came up and gave him a big high five afterwards. We've been even a little more infamous in the community. Just in the short space of time from driving the boat on my roof from the musical fountain waterfront stadium over to the campground, I stopped along the way at the marina where I check my mail, and somebody was honking behind me as I was pulling in. I thought maybe I had a strap loose, and a lady said, I saw you at the boat race. We were in one of the boats in the river, and we recorded the whole thing, and, give me your number. I'll send you the video. So she emailed us the video, and then I get back to the campground, and a couple of the campers there saw me unloading it. I saw you. Congratulations. So, we're being recognized around town, which is kind of fun. So what's weird is yesterday was loud and crazy, and less than a week earlier, I was paddling here. Just returned from a couple weeks in Colorado, one of my favorite states, favorite places. And this week's talk began in Colorado, in the quiet and the solitude of mountain lakes and hikes like this. And as with a lot of things in my life, it seems like the universe likes to kind of jerk me around into things, because I went from this, and that piece was juxtaposed by the craziness of the week that I returned to. So I came back Tuesday morning is when I pulled in at 8:30 in the morning after a marathon 16-hour drive in my RV, after the day before having driven another 5 hours back from Crested Butte and the mountain roads and all that. And then I came right back on Wednesday. I had a concert, Babe Rainbow, this great Australian band that I really love. On Thursday, I had another concert. Some of us drove to see the Rough and Tumble perform in Fenville with Flagship Romance, the Rough Romance Tour. On Friday was the Mega 80s night, which we were introduced to last year and came to. And by the time I was done with Friday night, I woke up the next day and I'm like, why are my hip flexors so sore? And I realized I've just been dancing and moving and grooving for days now. And then, of course, it wasn't over. Yesterday was the cardboard boat race, and we just went from morning till late afternoon. I was going on adrenaline. It was also my daughter's birthday, so we wrapped it up with a nice dinner at Noto's. So it's been a weird juxtaposition between all of the craziness of that and then this. This is less than a week earlier. This is one of the videos. There's audio with that clip, but it's just this silence of nature. You could, if you very carefully listen, actually hear the squishing of the moose's hooves as it's pressing into the wet earth. Two very, very different soundscapes. I climbed a couple more 14ers while I was there, this time without injury, thank goodness. One of them was Gray's Peak at 14,276 feet. There were some visitors at the top of the peak. And it's a lot of fun to see them. And of course, you're supposed to try to really give them a wide berth, not feed them, all of those things. These goats were quite comfortable around us. I was eating my peanut butter and jelly sandwich I had packed at the peak, and somebody else that was there is like, yeah, turn around now, you've got somebody wanting to take a bite of your sandwich. Probably one of my favorite moments was this. My daughter and I were walking from Brainerd Lake, and ahead we saw this bit of movement, and she's very attuned to movement in the woods, as you should be in Colorado. When we first saw the moose, she only saw the backside and thought it was a bear and was immediately rushing for her bear spray. We're trying to be very cognizant and aware of the animals and the nature that we're on their space. But we came around this turn in the trail, and again, there's not a lot of audio to this, but I kind of kept what was there so you could hear. But we saw a little trail visitor. There you go. Thank you. A cute little fox was like our trail guide for another quarter mile, just kind of kept loping on ahead of us, and he was aware that we were there and just doing his thing. I loved being that close and watching him listen, use his incredible ears that he has. And what you couldn't see on the other side of that rock, it looked like there was some freshly moved dirt. Some kind of a ground animal had either dug their way in, probably in protection. And that fox, using its evolved hearing to listen and to turn its head and be able to tell what's in the ground in these burrows. So this almost goes without saying, but silence isn't empty space. Silence is full. It's anything but empty. If we define silence as there's nothing happening here, we'll avoid it. That's why for some of us, we have a very uncomfortable relationship with silence. And that's okay. It's just something you have to notice about yourself and perhaps go a layer deeper and ask, why am I uncomfortable with silence? Because silence is a part of the universe. It's a part of the nature that we exist in. And it's not empty. It's full of potential. There's an acoustic ecologist, which is a great title for something if you ask me, named Gordon Hempton, who wrote a book called 1 Square Inch of Silence. I mentioned him about a year or so ago. You may remember him. He travels the world to find soundscapes and to record them in the most beautiful way possible. Some of the nature sounds that you heard as you were coming into the Acacia Theater this morning were off of those recordings. He travels and he's on a mission to find these spaces where silence gives room to everything that is. Here's a short little clip of a documentary about him.
Here we are in the Hoh Valley rainforest. This is a cathedral, my cathedral. In this forest is the quietest place in the entire United States, and it's only 1 square inch in size. My mission is to keep it that way. I'm Gordon Hempton. I'm a sound tracker. I travel the globe in search of vanishing sounds, including the most endangered of all, which is simply silence. Noise pollution is nearly inescapable. The Hoh Valley is the quietest, least noise-polluted place in the entire lower 48. I don't know if I can save silence, but I know that I can try.
Has anyone been to the Hoh Rainforest or the Olympic National Park? Yeah, I see quite a few. I did a trip to Olympic probably 7 or 8 years ago now. I don't think I realized then the significance of that rainforest. I was more connected to the changing ecology, the fact that you have different ecosystems in that same space, that you can go from the rainforest on up to the alpine meadows, on up to the elevated peaks there. But Gordon Hempton, who recorded there, he says the silence is not the absence of something. This is what's in the bulletin, that quote, but the presence of everything. It is the presence of time undisturbed. It can be felt within the chest. Silence nurtures our nature, our human nature, and it lets us know who we are. Left with a more receptive mind and a more attuned ear, we become listeners, not only to nature, but to each other. I like that he connects this idea that the discipline of listening opens us up to hearing each other better. Because as we're going to hear in a minute there, this divide between human and nature is a very human constructed thing. We are nature. But we don't realize that this practice, this discipline of listening to nature, to space, to emptiness, is a worthwhile endeavor to develop, not only because it will bring us personal calm, peace, downregulation, healing for our nervous system, but because it actually opens us up to be able to listen to others better as well. If anyone's interested in checking out any of Gordon's recordings, you can find him on the various platforms. You can purchase his media directly from his website if you want to support him directly. This is one of the recordings from the 1 Square Inch of Silence. Probably one of my favorite albums of his is called Atlantic Sunrise, and I've listened to it dozens and dozens of times. It's about a 59-minute recording. He makes great effort in his recordings to capture unadulterated sounds. So if there's a car or an airplane, he'll stop the recording and start over. And it's become increasingly more and more difficult to find that silence. If you even notice in that clip with the fox with my daughter, you heard that plane going over in the background. We have to kind of come to grips with our relationship with nature now, because, as I was saying, nature isn't somewhere else. We don't stand outside of nature and listen to it. We think of ourselves as superior, sitting atop the pyramid of species, that we are somehow so evolved. And we forget that we're only recently evolved apes that are still struggling with our reptilian instincts. We're only just so recently at the ability to consider our own consciousness, and already we have separated ourselves from the very world that we have evolved from and come out of, and we think of ourselves as standing outside of nature, going in and listening. That's reflected in our language when we talk about that. I spent time in nature. Has anyone ever said something like that? We're going on a hike into the woods. We're going to the mountains. We're going to spend time in nature. Nature is something else, somewhere else that we go to, and then we come back to what? To whatever not nature. Nature, of course, being natura, the very natural order of things, which we could get into a whole conversation just on that. On my trip, I read a book that was pointed out to me by Becky. She got it from the Bookman, and it was wonderful. It's called Forest Euphoria, The Abounding Queerness of Nature. Absolutely fantastic book. Forward written by Robin Wall Kimmerer, who we all know and love. And Patricia Kashan says this: in its common usage, the word nature carries a lot of baggage. It suggests a space that is distinct from the human species in our day-to-day world. I went to Colorado. I got to spend time in nature. And now I'm back in what? The real world. The word evokes a great divide, an idea that humans are elevated and apart from the primordial muck from which we sprang. But this partitioning is a cultural choice, not a scientific fact. This coming from an amazing mycologist, queer mycologist and author who writes with such brilliance to point out that this is a very culturally defined divide that we don't have to ascribe to. It's helpful within the realms of science to categorize things and species and genomes. We love to categorize things as human beings, but then the problem is when we categorize things, we then think of ourselves as separate from those things that we categorize, not realizing that we're the fish inside the fishbowl trying to describe the water that we're swimming in. We're a part of it. She said, humans are nature and nature is human. Humans are nature and nature is human. There's no divide. We are one and the same. The need to define these terms as separate realms is a result of our increasingly fractured relationship with other species, a wedge plunged into an imaginary crevice. Caring for our living world, being evolved in eco-activism, for our planet, preserving our parks, allowing free access for minorities and all peoples to be able to access these wonderful resources that aren't gate-kept. We as human beings have created these walls between us and nature. And all we have to do is just walk into it and spend more time in it and spend more time listening to it to realize that we're a part of it. And caring for our living world, it's not a charity that is directed towards something out there. It is care for a community to which we already belong. Because listening is a way of belonging. We all have various capabilities in our ability to listen. Some of us have to supplement our listening with a hearing aid, something to aid our listening. Any proud hearing aid owners want to shout it out? Look at that. There's nothing to be ashamed of. We live in a golden miracle age of technology. We have the ability now for us to be able to hear things even as our hearing naturally begins to degrade. It's amazing. I hope that by the time that I need it, and I'm definitely going to need it, especially after all the concerts I've been to just this week, and I'm always convenient like, where's my hearing protection? I forgot it. I love the fact that we have the ability to supplement our hearing because listening is a way of, how do I want to say this? It's a way of affirming someone or something's presence, their humanity, their nature. To listen to a moose, to listen to the crunch of rocks and granite as a mountain goat makes their way along the rocks at a peak of 14,000 feet, moving around effortlessly. To listen to an incredible songwriter like Annie, who shares authentic lyrics and music that's born out of struggle and grief and activism of her own. To listen to someone, to something, is to lend our attention to that thing, and that is the most sacred gift we can give. Silence is full. And even in the places of the truest silence, and And I still have on my bucket list one thing that I want to do, and I think this is possible at some point because I've developed this relationship with silence in all forms, in meditation, in various retreats, in nature. I would love to go to an acoustic chamber where they test the microphones and the speakers, the true sound deprivation chambers. I love even watching the videos of that on YouTube, where you're standing on a net and below you are acoustic absorbing foams and on all sides, and as soon as you close that door, the very strange thing is most humans become incredibly uncomfortable very quickly. Most can't last 10 to 15 minutes without feeling nauseous, uncomfortable. Very quickly you begin to hear what you think was silence, and then you realize, oh, I can actually hear my own heart beating in my chest. I can hear the blood pumping in my ears. I can actually hear my digestive system working. I'd love to experience that. But if we define silence as nothing happening, as I said earlier, we're going to avoid it. There's so much to be found in silence. Every great spiritual tradition makes room for silence. I want to close with some thoughts from the indigenous people from which we stole their lands when we moved here, who had a better connection to nature than many in our colonial society. Ella Cara Deloria said, "We Indians know about silence. We're not afraid of it. In fact, for us, silence is more powerful than words. Our elders were trained in the ways of silence, and they handed over this knowledge to us. They said, observe, listen, and then act." Boy, if we could just get that in that order. Observe, listen, and then act, they would tell us. That was the manner of living. The earth is always talking to us, but we should keep silent in order to hear her. There are many voices besides ours. That song that we started with in the beginning, the song, "The Sound of Silence" from Simon and Garfunkel, describes people hearing without listening. So the invitation this morning for us in our community is to become listeners again, to practice the art of listening, to listen without judgment, if possible, to listen without categorization, to allow the sounds to be just sounds, to nurture our soul. We're going to talk, before this series wraps up, about sound as a healing modality, music as a healing modality. There's a lot to be said about this as well. But our invitation today is just to become listeners again. Silence is not an escape from the world. It's one way for us to re-enter it. As Ella Deloria said, the earth is always talking. Species are always communicating to us. I love in my science fiction brain that Douglas Adams, among others, Hitchhiker's Guide, any Hitchhiker's Guides fan out there? I love that the species on our planet that we think of as the least evolved are actually the one running the show. The mice or the dolphins, so long, thanks for all the fish. I like the idea that we're thinking of ourselves as this elevated species when we're just the most recently able to write things down, and that's only one way of knowing things. What would it look like for us to listen to nature, to this planet, to the seasons, to the stars, and to hear what they say and speak to our soul? I know that sounds kind of woo when I say that, but what would it look like for you to just go out and sit and listen and to take whatever that problem is, that question that you're wrestling with, into nature and to listen? The earth is always talking to us, but we should keep silent in order to hear her. Maybe we become quiet enough to hear. We're going to invite Annie to come back up to the stage and share some more of her music. If anybody doesn't take the opportunity to follow some of our artists and get on their email list, I encourage you to do that. Annie's one of those artists that have a great email newsletter, and I enjoy reading about the things you're doing, and I especially enjoy artists and musicians who are very authentic, not just sharing the marketed version of what they think they need to share on a tour. Like, this is kind of like life as it is on the front lines. So can we just give one more warm welcome to Annie Bacon as she's joining us here this morning?
That was really beautiful. Thank you.